Welcome in to another edition of House of Horns. My name is Victor Corona, aka Vic, the producer, and joining me as always is Rams beat reporter Gilbert Manzano, who now does it for Sports Illustrated MMQB. Gilbert, I was just telling you right before we got started that I didn't know much about the Patriots, but I got to go on a walk and got to learn a lot about the Patriots. So I'm excited actually to talk about this matchup between the 4-5 Rams and the 3-7 Patriots. How about yourself, Gilbert? How are you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm doing well, and I think this game is a little interesting, maybe because the Rams are coming off an ugly game, and the Patriots beat the Bears. So, Rams fans don't want to hear this, but it's starting to seem like maybe a closer game than maybe we expected here. We could have been easily
Hmm.
talking about how the Rams are going to cruise here, and now not so much because of what happened last week. So, is it something that we fall into the trap of the moment? Are we making too much off of 1 week? Are we going to overlook that? So it's one of those trap games that we need to be careful about too. Can't fall into the trap of 1 week off
Yeah.
the Patriots high there and the Rams low there. So let's break it all down.
Yeah, let's get into it. We got a lot to get into here, Gilbert. We'll get our usual stuff as we usually do with our, we'll go over latest news and notes from the Rams, which there's not a lot to go over, but that means we do have an injury report after not having one last week because of the Monday Night Football game, and then we'll get into storylines for both teams, and lastly, game predictions. Before we get to our game preview, Gilbert, do you have an engagement question of the week for our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, get it started here in the comments, listeners and viewers of House of Horns. Let us know the keys to the game here. How can the Rams, beat the Patriots? Do you view it as a trap game or a get right game? How do you view this one? Or maybe it's it's a close game. Go ahead and handle business. Win any way you can. Maybe you want to see them dominate, but let me know the keys to whatever way you want to see them win. It could be a close one again. So maybe it's something where you make Drake May one dimensional, remove Ramondre Stevenson. Maybe it's scoring a touchdown for Matthew Stafford. How about that? Rams offense. Maybe think about that, scoring a touchdown after getting shut out by the Dolphins at home. Still can't believe that game. And it felt like yesterday because it was a Monday night game. So let us know to the keys for a get right game here for the Rams, a dominant game, or maybe just go home and win game. Maybe you don't care how they do it, but just let me know how you think the Rams can pull this off in New England.
Yeah, and I mean it's gonna be. I feel like it kind of reminds me of the Giants game from last season, if you remember that,
Oh yeah,
Gilbert,
yeah.
where the Rams had to come back and win that game late. I mean, it's always one of those where everybody just assumes like, hey, the Rams are gonna win this game, and you also have to think about the fact that it's a short week, and as well as you're having to go from the West Coast to the East Coast, plays that 10 a.m. game, and
Hmm.
I know that McVay has had a good record in 10 a.m. games, but you also have to kind of worry about those things. That's why we're here to break that down, Gilbert. But let me go through quickly through the Rams and Patriots news and notes, plus the injury report real quick. And there's not a lot of news and notes in terms of the Rams. And I guess the only big thing that happened or that Sean McVay talked about that was big was offensive lineman Rob Havenstein. I should say right tackle Rob Havenstein. There's a possibility that he plays, but it seems like he might miss this game as well with an ankle injury. He did not practice today. Neither did Joe Noteboom, Charles Woods, cornerback, and nose tackle Neville Gallimore. So I think when we'll get into the issues with the offensive line, but not having Rob Havenstein and then Joe Noteboom being on the injury report again, not a good thing, right, Gilbert?
Yeah, but honestly, do you want Joe Noteboom? I know I'm harsh with the guy, but he's not very good. When he plays, he actually hurts the team more than he gets hurt a lot too. So it's like
Yeah.
you got to find reasons to keep him around, and he's not available. He's not consistent on the field. They paid him all that money, and it just didn't work out. I guess he was pretty good for a little bit. When he was filling in for Andrew Whitworth, but it just hasn't worked out for some. That's one of the weirdest mysteries with Joe Noteboom. But you know, I guess maybe try somebody else. We saw what happened Monday night. It just he wasn't the answer, and we'll see what happens with Rob Havenstein, which doesn't look good. Going off the injury report. But I know you're not facing a very dominant defensive front, but you got some talent there. With the Keon White there. I want to is Barrymore, but no, Barrymore's not played all year, right? Uh,
Yeah, for
so
the
for the Patriots. So yeah, you can name a bunch of players there, but there's still a very well coached team with Jaron Mayo. So they also lost Matthew Judon because they traded him. So a lot of moving pieces here for this.
yeah, Uche was traded to the. We'll get into it. I mean, but they still have some dudes on there, and we'll get into it when we talk about
But
the
even
matchup.
look at the Dolphins. Who did they really have on their front? Like, there's no Bradley Chubb or Jalen Phillips, and they still wrecked the game from that for them. So
Yeah,
it doesn't matter who's on there. These are NFL level pass rushers. So uh, I just want to see something different. I know we're just talking about the injury report, but I got to see some tweaks here to this offensive line after what happened on Monday night.
yeah, and we'll get into it during storylines, Gilbert. And then in terms of the only other injury on the, I should say, notable player on the injury report was Byron Young with the knee. He was limited to today, and then uh, safety Cam Curl was a full participant with the knee. So I know that Cam Curl did not start the game on Monday, but he did play most of the snaps. So it's good to see him be a full participant. But yeah, when I saw Byron Young on the report there, I was like, well, at least he was a limited participant.
Yeah, yeah, and it's only Wednesday too. So he's been
Yeah.
playing well. I know he got lost. He's been getting lost because of Jerry Verse, but he's been playing well too. He's been steady.
Yeah, and then for the Patriots, the only one that kind of stood out in terms of people, a couple names that people might recognize is Kyle Duggar, with an ankle was limited, the safety, and then as well as tight end Hunter Henry with the foot. Outside of that, it's a pretty long list on their injury report, but there's not a lot of guys that people know or that are gonna be recognizable to Ram fans. So I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted those two names just in case they don't play. But if you're limited, most likely you're gonna end up playing on Sunday. All right, Gilbert, let's get to the Rams and Patriots storylines. Who do you want to start with here? With the I have a lot. There's a lot in terms of the Rams that I want to get into with you because it's kind of our midseason report. This is the halfway point of the season, pretty much, if you really think about it. So, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the home team or the Rams, who are the road team here?
Yeah, let's get the Patriots out the way here. I'm
Okay.
cool with that.
All right. So this is the first season now for the Patriots, in more than 2 decades now, Gilbert, that they don't have Bill Belichick or Tom Brady. Bill Belichick as a head coach, as well as Tom Brady as a quarterback. So they're all in on the rebuild, as we saw during the off season. You were at the draft combine. You were able to see Drake May up close and personal. And I'll ask you about that. But before I ask you about that, just in terms of they also hired Gerard Mayo during the offseason to be their coach. Another guy that's from the the Belichick tree. They knew that they wanted him. They made sure that he didn't go. There was a lot of interest from teams around the league, and so they secured him and they made sure that they replaced Belichick with Gerard Mayo. So I guess actually let me get to a couple comments here, Gilbert, before we get into I ask you the question here. All good things says regarding the Pats game, it could be a close one off topic or perhaps a hot take, but Mavek overrated. His play calling is subpar and the offense has never been consistent.
Yeah, nothing new here. A lot of people feel that the same way. All good things there, but I don't know if I want to call him overrated. He has a Super Bowl title, but I get people are really fed up with the up and downs from Sean McVay, especially since the Super Bowl title. You get to a point where like, how many years can you keep getting away with that? I got a Super Bowl title and you don't excuse. But we just saw last year where they went to the playoffs with essentially a no name team until they became stars because they were under Sean McVay's watch. So I get it. Play calling, developing are two different things. Drafting are many different things. But I just feel people get really frustrated with that. But I understand.
Yeah, and we'll get into it. I have some stuff, like I said, where that has to do with the Rams and that offense, and we'll get into it. Delver says, "Hello, compas. Key to the game: Rams must reestablish the ability to run the ball consistently and build and
Yeah.
maintain momentum. Let Stafford run the show." And then Happy Gilmore says, "Please don't be pathetic like last game. Defense has been holding the offense on their shoulders, and
Yep.
that's another thing that we'll get into during our storyline." So now back to it, Gilbert. Let's start off with Drake May. Did they do the right thing by having him sit at the beginning of the season and now kind of let him come in? You know, you saw uh, Jacoby Brissett start the half of the game so far, and then they brought Drake May in. He won a game against the Jets, even though he left with a concussion. And then last week he had probably his best game of the season against the Bears, going up against fellow rookie Caleb Williams. So, what are your thoughts in terms of what the Patriots did with Drake May?
Yeah, well, Drake May's playing great. He's playing well. Obviously, they're not winning too many games, but he's playing well. He's living up to that number 3 status there. So, I guess in a way, you gotta say, Jerome Mail, good job there figuring that one out. And for me, I think I lean more towards, okay, if you have a top 3 pick, or a quarterback, go and play them, especially when you have like a team that's like not exciting at all, and you're looking to kickstart the rebuild. And when you play the guy out there, and you see that he's a franchise quarterback, your rebuilding just instantly jumps through the roof. Like, what you got instead of waiting. But I
Yeah,
get it. There's also a lot of situations where you play a guy too early and they don't do well. We see it with Bryce Young. We see it with Anthony Richardson. We saw it with Sam Darnold. We saw it with Zach Wilson. Just name a bunch of Jets quarterbacks if you want. But too many times we've seen it. But we saw C.J. Stroud. We saw Jaden Daniels. We saw Joe Burrow. We saw Justin Herbert. It happens both ways. That's why I never get into these arguments. I really don't care. It's more about the situation for me and what's going on. And I thought the Patriots were just terrible. They're boring. Like, go ahead and play the guy and add some excitement to this post Belichick era. But I'm not gonna say that Gerard made the wrong move, because he's playing well. And Jacoby Brissett did win that first game against the Bengals. We can't forget about that. So
yep,
he didn't take as many hits either when the offensive line was really bad. And to maybe also, for a rookie coaching staff or a rookie head coach in Jerome Mayo, it bought him maybe 4 or 5 games to get the flow of how he wants to call a game or how he wants to manage a game. And it's also hard to do when you want to make sure you're protecting your rookie. So from that standpoint, I get a Jerome Mayo. That was the right move, and it's paying off right now. And speaking about Jerome Mayo, it says a lot that his team is winning some of these upset games, like the Bengals, the Jets, the Bears. Like, they're playing hard for him, and he's getting production from Drake May. So shout out to Gerard Mayo right there. But yeah, Drake May is doing well. One thing that a lot of people really liked about him, and it's always hard to how to really not overrate this, but the whole being outgoing and being smart, being a good leader. And when he was talking at the podium at the combine, I'm like, oh, this guy's actually, he's gonna be good for a report. He's very entertaining. He's very
right.
talkative. He knows what the hell he's talking about. But that doesn't tell you if you're a good football player. And now we're seeing that. So people really like the guy. They gravitate towards him. So that's a big plus right there. Um, that first start that he had against the Texans, he was playing behind a terrible offensive line. He was taking a
Yeah,
beating, but he was standing in the pocket, taking shots on the field, and people respect that right away. I remember covering Justin Herbert's rookie year when he took a shot from the Chiefs in that first game. People respect that. Okay, you're gonna play for us, play hard. Let's see what you got, kid. So, and now he's throwing the game time pass to the Titans. That was a chaotic game, but he got that game to overtime. And then he just outdueled Caleb Williams. So things are looking right for Drake May, the number 3 pick.
yeah. There's a lot to kind of kind of talk about in terms of what the Patriots are doing, and I like the fact that you started off with Drake May. I know this was the question in terms of why did we like the way they went about things in terms of letting him sit? And I think part of it too, Gilbert, was the fact that they had a beat up offensive line for the first couple of games. If you look at it, they've started the same starting offensive line has started now for the last 3 games. So that helps. And then number two as well was a gauntlet of a start that they were going up against at the beginning of the season with a lot of good defenses. And so sometimes it's just better to protect your franchise quarterback because you don't want to lose them, as you said. And then, kind of talking about Gerard Mayo, Gerard Mayo is one of two head coaches that are actually younger than Sean McVay, which we haven't had to talk about in a while because Sean McVay's been the youngest coach for a while now, and as you said, just kind of listening, kind of prepping for this show, just listening to people from the Patriots' point of view, he's gotten a lot of criticism for some of the decisions that he's made so far this season. But I mean, I don't know how much you can expect from a team that was drafting number 3 overall last season, and so you just want to see progress. And so far, they've been able to do that. And so as a first year coach. And then I think the other thing, Gilbert, and I that goes to my next question in terms of, that was one of the things I brought up was the Belichick tree. We know that the Belichick tree hasn't been as fruitful as what we've seen from Sean McVay and his tree. So did they go about doing this the right way and hiring someone from the Belichick tree? Because we've seen it's I know a lot of people talk about some coaching guys that have come out of his tree, but it hasn't been good at all. I know people talk about Brable, but Brable wasn't part of his coaching tree, so it's just been really bad if you really look at it, Gilbert.
Yeah, before I get to Gerard Mayo, the hardest thing people or coaches that come from that tree is like trying to do the same thing when you don't have the Super Bowl rings, you don't have the resume, you don't have the what the Patriots have, you don't have Tom Brady either, and you try to go and do that somewhere else. And like, who do you think you are? You're not Bill Belichick. And it also it's tough for guys. I just saw an interview with is it Michael Bennett, the former Seahawks
Yes,
uh
the
defensive end.
defensive tackle. Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
or tackle who went on Julian Edelman's podcast and saying like, I didn't like playing there. I didn't like going to the Patriots. I was from the free spirited Pete Carroll days where like, okay, you're a good player, go do your job, show up to work, be responsible, and that's all he cared about. And it was just too much of a grind with New England, and he didn't have fun, so it just doesn't work everywhere. So I think people try to copy that. Josh McDaniel has been my way or the highway. That hasn't worked out for Josh McDaniels, but there's a bunch of coaches we could go down the list. But the one thing that maybe I feel like Gerard Mayo is doing well is he's not really a Belichick guy. I get it. He played for the guy, he coached with the guy, but Robert Kraft pointed him out. Robert Kraft was like, "We're holding on to that guy. He's my guy." He's kind of a
hmm
Robert Kraft guy, and I never like over the years. Maybe I just don't watch too many Bill Belichick pressers, but I don't know how much of an endorser he was. Like, I don't know how much I was like, yeah, he's gonna be my replacement. I never got that vibe, but then again, he never wanted to stop coaching, right? It was a whole back and forth when he got fired. It's like, okay, I'm not gonna quit. You better fire me. So it was a whole rift there. He was dealing with his own things there. So I never really felt like, hey, you're in good hands here with Jerome Mail. I never seemed that way because it wasn't a nice handoff. And then when he called his players soft, who criticized Bill Belichick? So I'm not trying to add more to the story, but it just never felt like that was his guy. I'm sure he's always said good things about him, but it just felt like Robert Kraft always wanted him. He saw something in him. And anytime there was an interview to hire him elsewhere to be the DC, someone like for a long time, he wasn't even the defensive coordinator. He was like the linebackers coach. And
yep,
he couldn't get the fancy title. He was trying to leave, and Robert Kraft kept saying, "No, no, no, keep staying. I'm about to give you money," because he probably knew behind the scenes like it's not going to work out that long with Bill Belichick. And as we saw, there was a rift towards the final year. So maybe just kind of seeing that, like, hey, let's do something differently. And everybody wanted something different. They got tired of Bill Belichick. So him doing things his way, seeing it, how it worked, the good and the bad from Belichick, I'm sure he took for many years, has worked out. And Victor, one of the best things you could do in a rebuild where like you're not going to be an instant, obviously winning right away, like the Commanders, right, is a great way to have a rebuild. But the more realistic way is to lose a bunch of games, but also be competitive in games and then have a couple upsets. And at the end of the year, you have the top 5 pick in the draft. Look at the Cardinals from last year when they beat the Eagles, they beat the Steelers, they beat the Cowboys. They only got 4 victories, but they still got a top 5 pick, drafted Marvin Harrison Jr., and boom, here we are, 6-4. So now look at the Patriots. They beat the Jets, the Bengals, and the Bears. They're playing hard. So they might still end up with a top 5 pick, but they're setting that standard for Gerard Mayo. And I kind of like that for this blue book here or the blueprint for a rebuild in New England.
Yeah, and I think they've gone about it the right way, and I know that I think part of the criticism too, Gilbert, was they waited to hire a GM. It felt like too,
Oh yeah,
and that was another thing too with this franchise. And I thought they were gonna fall under the same thing that we've seen a lot of dynasty fall under. Is like once the head coach and the quarterback that led you to those dynasties are gone, it's hard to kind of get back to it because it's always hard for that coach, to is the one that takes over to be successful. And I feel like what you just mentioned, when you have Robert Kraft be the one that picked them out, I think that helps as opposed to it being Belichick who said, "Hey, choose this guy." Because I always hate the fact that the guy picks, the coach leaving is the one that picks the guy that's gonna take over for him because that never
yeah,
works out, it feels like, unless it's the a really stacked roster, which the only time I've seen it in terms of the NFL was the Cowboys with Barry Switzer, but those were Jimmy Johnson's players. This was a complete rebuild, and I like the fact that
yeah.
you're
Look,
starting with a young
look at
guy.
Dennis Allen with Sean Payton. Sean Payton said,
Yeah,
"Hey, take this guy," and it didn't work out.
yeah, exactly. And so that never works out. And you're right. It was probably a different way of doing things that he liked, that Robert Kraft liked from Gerard Mayo. But yeah, I like you. You're right. They've gone about it the right way because one of the things you always mention, Gilbert, is you don't want to be in the middle. You want to do this the right way. If you're gonna, just build this the right way, you go for the complete rebuild, but there's a lot of young guys on this team, Gilbert. There's talent, and we'll get into it. I was talking the defense sacked Caleb Williams 9 times last week.
Mm.
There's guys like Keon White, there's Kyle Duggar, there's Christian Gonzalez. So they've been able to draft really well. Um, there's a couple of linebackers that I listen that people were talking about that are high on. There's a kid named Anthony Jennings that people are really excited about. So there's talent on this team. You even talked about Braymore, who had a blood clot, hasn't played this year. That's another guy from Alabama that has been really good. And so there's talent on this team. It's just going to take a little bit of time, and they'll have the cap space. But yeah, before we get to the Rams, I just want to say, like, I would not underestimate this team, especially if you're a Rams team, because offensively you're struggling, and this is actually a really good defense. It's not a defense that a lot of people know, but like I just said, you have guys like Jonathan Jones, Kyle Duggar, Christian Gonzalez. Like, there's names in there. They're not household names just because they're 3-7 so far this season.
Yeah, I wish I kind of got a little more from them. Like you mentioned, they're not a bad defense, but when they allowed 30 points to the Jaguars, they got lit up by the Texans, and the Texans can't do anything against anybody else. So maybe it's kind of the bumps and the bruises of the early season, and also losing Christian Barrymore was a big loss. They paid him a lot of money in the offseason to help with that interior, and then trade some guys like Uche, and then but they resigned a bunch of guys too, like Kyle Duggar. So even Uche got resigned, and they got rid of him very, very quickly. But I just wanted to see more, like when you mentioned earlier, Victor, about some of the fans that not liking his decision making. Like things like that are going to really be under the microscope when you're actually in more competitive games, and you start going from a four-win team to 8 or 9 win team. So maybe he's learning all that right now, and he could learn how to be a better down the stretch coach, and then maybe the defense, because also it's hard to have a defense clicking when you're also in charge of the offense and special teams. So, but I do like a lot. It's just from that standpoint, me nitpicking. I wish I saw a little more from the defense.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, one other thing I just wanted to say in terms of Gerard Mayo, um, also being able to pick your offensive coordinator and your defensive coordinator. I thought Alex Van Pelt has been really good for Drake May and what he's done, especially the last couple games of getting him going. One of the things that I saw from a little bit of that game that I saw against the Bears was the fact that they were putting Drake May in play action. And before we go, I just want to say, in terms of, it might be a hot take, but I really like Drake May. I know that there wasn't a lot of people going into the draft process that were high on Drake May, but you brought up Herbert and the comparisons. I just thought he looked a lot like, and also acted a lot like Herbert. And for me, he was one of those guys that I was like, I felt like he's going to be that one guy that no one talks about that is probably going to be the best the best quarterback out of this draft. And I would not be surprised if that ends up being the case because of the way they're handling him, and then the way what I've already seen in terms of what he's doing on the football field.
Yeah, and to add to that, Victor, like I thought the draft lead up was so weird because it was like Caleb Williams way up here above everybody else, and then Jaden Daniels over here, but also very far ahead of Drake May. I'm like, I thought these guys were a little closer, and especially, I don't watch college football like that, but a lot of people who watch college football kept telling me Jaden Daniels is that guy. Like that's why when we had that segment for Combos and the B, who would have put your money on for Rookie of the Year? I'm like, all right, F it, Jaden Daniels, and he's doing well. But I'm like, why was there such a separation between the three quarterbacks? And I kept telling myself too, like, everybody keeps comparing Drake May to Justin Herbert, but then he's being an afterthought as the distant number three pick. I just didn't understand it. And then you kind of fall into the trap with the whole media hype. Like Caleb Williams
Yeah.
is that guy. The next best thing, the next best thing is Trevor Lawrence. What has Trevor Lawrence really done? And I kept saying like, but I like Drake May, and I respect the people's opinion on Jaden Daniels, but I guess Caleb Williams a guy, and it's starting to look like the gap was much closer. Albert Breer, my colleague at SI, he just had a story where he talked to people in the know in the NFL saying that if they had a redo or redraft already, like it'd probably be Jaden Daniels number one, and then a very hard discussion between Caleb Williams and Drake May. And that was not that discussion 5, 6 months ago.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, Gilbert, that one of the things I've learned too in terms of the draft process is just it's hard to trust people, especially when they continue to tell you stuff and they continue to be wrong about it. And we've already seen it the last 2 seasons with CJ Stroud and now Jaden Daniels. So, I think that's the lesson going into a draft process is just sometimes we don't know anything, and it's just best to just let those guys play, and that way you learn more about them because it's just hard. And college football is so different than what we're seeing in the NFL right now that it's kind of hard to kind of know what they're going to be in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. So hopefully we learn that lesson when the draft comes around again, even though people don't really like this one. But Shadur Sanders, it's going to be a hot name.
Yeah, I know he's going to be on top of a lot of people's mock drafts. Now moving on to the Rams, Gilbert, and there's a lot to get into here in terms of our midseason report when it comes to the Rams. And one of the things that we talked about, after the Dolphins game was how much this offense has struggled this season, um, especially when you look at how well and surprisingly well the defense has played as well as the special teams. And it's crazy to kind of think about it, the fact that you know the offense, you know the there's a lot of issues that we've talked about with the offense, but one of the things that I saw this week, kind of getting ready, was the fact that the Rams are 31st in first quarter points, Gilbert, just ahead
Mm.
of the Bears. They're averaging about a point and a half a quarter in the first quarter, I should say. They're minus 43 in the first quarter. And so why has my question to you is, why has the Rams offense struggled to get started in games this season?
So I'm gonna say something for the McVay supporters and something for the people who are tired of McVay. One sign of a bad coach or a so-so coach is when your team's not prepared in the first quarter. Matt Eberflus, I'm not surprised he's on that list for the Bears there. If you can't score off your scripted opening drive, then what the hell are you doing in the whole week? So that's not a good sign especially for those who keep screaming about McVay and how much say he has on the field. But then it's also kind of it's not a real number because they were banged up for most of the season. There was no Puka Nakua, no Cooper Cup, no offensive line. So like, yeah, they're gonna struggle scoring points, especially early on where they're trying to figure out with the I guess duct tape or whatever tape you want to call for the offensive line and who's gonna be a wide receiver today. All right, let's see what we could do. And then you get into a rhythm second, third quarter. So that could be the reason for the poor numbers there. So it's hard to gauge it. And but when you had everybody healthy Monday Night Football and you still are slow, maybe it's more of the being unprepared. I guess issue there.
Yeah, and I heard something today that kind of made me change my mind on this, and I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt of as of why they've been struggling, and part of it is what you said, Gilbert, but also they had a McVay and that offensive the coaches had a way they wanted to do things this season, right? They went in on having a big offensive line to be able to run the ball, and then two-thirds of it get hurt, and so he's having to switch things up on the fly. And one of the things that we see a lot, around the NFL is that a lot of coaches just refuse to change things, right? Like they will not change the way they run things because that they're hard-headed about it. And then with McVay, he's actually, gone the other way. He's like, okay, well, I wanted to run the ball with my guys, but now I don't even have that. I don't even have receivers to be able to block as well. So I'm gonna have to change things on the fly and do what the guys that I do have what they do best. And so he's been able to do that. And then now he gets his offensive line back, and they can't even block anybody. Jonah Jackson, Joe Nobung. You put in three guys. Maybe and this is where I'll say that I was wrong. I just assumed that they were going to be ready to go, but apparently you do need to be able to go and practice and be able to do some, to be able to have some chemistry, because if you don't have that, it's going to be hard for this offense to get started, especially. And then the other thing too, Gilbert, it just looks like Matthew Stafford has taken a step back, and as much as we can, we gave him praise last season, he has not been the same quarterback we saw last season, and we can't say it's because of injury, but I guess the only excuse we can make is the fact that he hasn't had his starting offensive line for the whole season.
Yeah, and maybe that's one of the reasons why the team wasn't quick to commit to him long term. They gave him a little extra money for the 2024 season, but he is up there in age, taking a lot of hits. And then, a lot of the smart teams they keep options open, and now it could maybe work in their favor. Okay, that it's time to move on, Stafford. If he doesn't get right in the final 2 months, I'm not saying he won't, but there's a chance. So the problem would have been like, hey, if he plays well, and then you don't have him on their contract, and now he has all the leverage. So that was a gamble by the team to do that. But when you consider all the things I mentioned with the injuries and the hits, and you're trying to move into a new era here with a younger roster, it was a good bet to make. So we'll see if it pans out, but I'm sure they don't want to be right. They want to have one good year with Stafford before they make that decision. They wanted it to be tough because if it's tough, that means he's playing well. So, uh, yeah, it hasn't been the best season. We all thought, when he beat the Vikings and they were clicking there, or even Seattle was a little bit of a slog fest, but he got that touchdown pass to Demarcus Robinson. But the Vikings game was the one that felt like, all right, here we go. It's going to be 2023 all over again, and it hasn't really been that with Seattle game, and then the egg that they laid against Miami at home. So we'll see if like again, like I just mentioned that CJ Stroud and his bad passing offense, which has been broken all year, they dropped 41 points on New England. Can you do that, Matthew Stafford, Puka Nakua, Cooper Cup? I will hope so, or at least put 30 points on them. If you can't, then you're probably going to ask yourself, what's going on here? Are you more of a bad team, or you are going to be one of the teams trying to fight for a playoff spot? Because the Cardinals are not going away. The 49ers are going to start picking it up now that they're healthy again. Christian McCaffrey's back. So, yeah, right now you're only 1.5 game behind or whatever it is, but you could easily be down, 2.5, and by the time Christmas comes around, you're out of it. So, you got to get games like this. So we'll see. This is like I mentioned, like or I put in the title here. It's an ideal game to get right. If Matthew Stafford's not doing anything here, then you definitely got to ask these questions of what the hell happened.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes to the Dennis Green. We are who you think who you think they are. Like if you don't, if you don't win this game, it just goes to show you that you are a under 500 team. That's what what your record says. That was another Bill Parcells thing. You are what your record says, and so that's when you start talking about those things. Before we continue on with the storylines here with the Rams, I want to get to some of these comments. We have Daniel Calderon. He says, "Hey y'all, I don't have a good feeling about this game. No boom is hurt too." Yeah, and then he was commenting about the stat that I gave in terms of the first half. He says, "Damn, that's horrible." I mean, the first quarter.
Yeah.
And then he also adds, "We don't have consistency, consistent identity. We can't run or be a passing team." And that's a great point. I don't think we know what the identity is of this team on offense, Gilbert.
I thought it was gonna be just look at what they did last year. Like, okay, here we go. Like I mentioned, the Vikings game. Like we know that then it's gonna be 2023, but it wasn't that easy. So yeah, maybe we are back in square one. Like, what the hell are you guys doing offensively? I really don't know. I really wanted to point to the easy answer, but it hasn't happened the last 2 games.
I agree. All good things says no boom is who he is, and he never improved from the time he entered the league. So
Yeah, it might be his
yeah.
last year with the Rams, or they could cut
Oh
him
yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah, because he took a pay cut to come
Yeah.
back, and yeah, it'll be. Delbert has a long comment here. He says 8 years ago, McVay arrived quickly, became offensive guru, became an all-time winning Ram coach. Lost assistant coaches, but won a Super Bowl. Has teams figured him out? Will he relinquish play calling?
Delbert loves to ask this question. I don't think so. Like I mentioned on the recap show, it's going to take a few more games like Miami. You don't want that, Delbert. You don't want more Miami games. But if it happens and it's like 4 or 5 of them, then people will start asking. But also, speaking about becoming the all-time winning Rams coach, Sean McVay, we forgot to give out
Yes,
a RIP to John Robinson and
yes.
what he did for the Rams, what he did for USC. It's kind of wild to think that he, I guess I'm not sure when he passed away, but they announced it, before the Rams game. They gave him a moment of silence. So yeah, RIP to John Robinson and his family.
Yeah, and yeah, he was a great coach here in Southern California, as you mentioned with USC. I remember him from USC and the Rams. And he coached twice, I think, for USC, or was it the Rams? I forget, but he coached under two separate occasions for one of those teams. And then sorry, one more here from Daniel Calderon. Season over if we lose to the Pats.
Maybe, especially with the 49ers beat the Seahawks. Well, the Cardinals are on a bye week, but then you fall behind 2 games, but
Yeah.
maybe, but it's kind of a little too early though.
Yeah, and then all good things McPass needs to let LaFleur do his thing. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people are not happy with McVay, and I mean, I do wonder like how long do you get after you win a Super Bowl before people, you know, become frustrated, especially when the things you're known for aren't going the way they should, and certainly it's been 2 years now, Gilbert, and as a couple, fans have mentioned, he has a under 500 since he won the Super Bowl record, so, yeah, there's a lot to kinda digest there, but I think he gets the benefit of the doubt for right now, and we'll see what happens the rest of the season. Um,
Well, real
I
quick, did Doug Peterson get like 2 or 3 seasons after you won for the Eagles? Because that's the last one I can remember
I
a Super
I
Bowl winning
don't think
coach.
he even got 2 seasons, Gilbert, 'cause I remember I think he got 1 season, and then the next season he was gone.
Yeah, because then that would be a kind of a large gap between he got the Jaguars job, which he might have got like 2, but I got to double check. But I'm trying to think because obviously not Andy Reid, not well, I guess Bill Belichick got fired. That could be another one too, but that took a long time. What was it like 4 bad seasons? But then you won
Oh, yeah.
like 6 Super Bowls. That could be another one. That one was just really long stretch. But maybe the Doug Peterson one's the only one. But people don't view Sean McVay like Doug Peterson, and also it's not Philly where people are just pissed off the whole time. So it's gonna take a lot of patience here. People are gonna be very patient with McVay.
Yeah, and then, well, now, Gilbert, this is where, we kinda get into a little bit more of where does the criticism go in terms of the way this team has been built? And for as much praise as we give Les Need for his drafts lately, free agency has been a bust so far, Gilbert. With what they've gotten out of Jonah Jackson, Kobe Parkinson, who did not play much. I don't think he even took a snap against Miami, a tight end, and then Tre'Davious White has now been traded. So um, how much of the offensive struggles are to blame on the free agency signings, Gilbert? Now, one more thing I'll point out, Gilbert, is that if you look at the defense, there's not much money that is spent on the defense, the majority of the money that they have allocated this season is all on the offense, whether it's Matthew Stafford, Cooper Cup. You went out there like outside of re-signing Demarcus Robinson and Kevin Dotson, who I thought those were good re-signings. The free agent ones with Kobe Parkinson's trade, Tre'Davious Watt. I will say the one that has worked out in terms of the defense was bringing back Darius Williams. But yeah, I mean those two signings so far look really bad on the
Yeah,
offense.
yeah. Free agency is tricky because you always got to ask yourself, why is this guy on the market when you have franchise tags and you got 5th year options on the rookie year? Like people controlled a lot of these prime years for players. So if one gets away, you got to ask yourself, why are they available? That's why I think maybe the Rams weren't willing to jump for a lot of defensive players. They probably thought maybe there's not a lot of good players out there defensively, and if you do, you have to overpay, maybe like a Christian Wilkins kind of thing, and they maybe saw more value on the offensive side. But I'm not gonna knock the Jonah Jackson one too much because it's always safe to get a guard, but he's been hurt, and then now they're asking him to play another position. That's not his fault. They're doing
Yeah,
that to him. He was good at
that's a good
guard, but
point.
but also you got to ask, why did Detroit not want to match some money, and they went out and paid somebody who's older and got a cheaper contract, and Kevin Zeitler, and that's been okay so far. I thought it was gonna really hurt them, to be honest, on the Lions, but it really hasn't. It's kind of plug and play there because they set the tone there with the offensive line. That's a good operation. But I thought it was gonna be a better one with Jonah Jackson, and it just didn't work out. But the other one, Tre'Davious White, that was just a prayer there to help the defense. But it wasn't a massive contract. It was a, hey, bet on me, please, and let's see what I could do for you. And they took a chance, and it didn't work out. But yeah, and obviously Kobe Parkinson. But it really felt like Leslie didn't want to, because they finally had money for the first time, but he didn't want to spend a bunch of money, which is smart. You want to pick wisely. And then Jerry Burst, he hit that. That was his first round pick in what, 10 years, and he's done so
Yeah.
well with that. So that's what they want to do. And then sometimes in the NFL, that's the better way to do it. So that's why I feel like when Stafford, when the season comes around, when the season ends, Stafford might be on the way out because they want to get younger and they want to
Hmm.
have more players on rookie contract. That's what it seems like to me. They're not the Rams that go all in anymore.
Yeah, no, and they're going about it the right way, Gilbert. I mean, they're trying to stay relevant while also rebuilding it. It looks like, and I think that's the way to kind of look at it. I mean, and part of it too. I heard it on the radio today, and I laughed, but I honestly don't hate the idea, and that would be that if they do let Stafford go, I would not be surprised if you see Sam Darnold with the Rams. Especially, well, now things are kind of a little bit complicated with that situation too, Gilbert, because I just saw JJ McCarthy had a second knee surgery, which is
Yeah.
never good. But we'll see what happens. But
But
that's for the
Well,
offseason.
that's a good point too, because it is for the offseason. But the point is, like, they've built enough of a good roster where they could have a veteran guy who needs an opportunity, like Baker Mayfield. Like the guys who do well, and who are like these new projects that do well, they have a good foundation. They have a good roster. Look at Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. Like, if you want those guys that have been thrown aside, well, don't do the same thing the Jets and the Browns did for those guys. You need to have a good roster, so you take a chance on that. That way, you're not reaching for, let's say, I don't know, Carson Beck from the Georgia, who I thought was gonna be the
Yeah,
number one pick, but nobody cares about him. But or
yeah,
Cameron Ward from Miami. But anyways, that is for the offseason.
yeah. And I mean, yeah, I've heard that the now again, take this with a grain of salt. I've heard that the quarterback class outside of Shador Sanders is not great, and
Yeah.
so yeah, there's no reason for you to jump up and try to get one of those quarterbacks early in the first round. But things can change because we know how much people like to, uh, you know, overemphasize the quarterback position once the offseason begins, and so a lot of guys get bumped up
I'm
that
gonna
we.
say Zach Wilson's gonna be the new project for Sean McVay. How about that?
Oh, that'll be something to keep an eye on.
No one's
All
gonna
right,
like that.
let me get to more of these comments, and then we'll get to the last storyline here that I have for you, Gilbert. Michael Armenta says loss to the Dolphins was embarrassing. Michael Armenta also says RIP Coach Robinson, great Trojans and Rams coach. And then Daniel Calderon says we really need a tight end. No wonder they try to push for Bowers.
Yeah.
And then he says, "Man, he also says, man, I hope Stafford comes back." And I think just to kind of put a pin on the offense, they do really miss Tyler Higbee, Gilbert. Um, uh, I didn't think they would need him as much as they do, but yes, they're I didn't realize how valuable he was, but now we're starting to see it, especially with how bad Colby Parkinson has been
Mm.
this season. And I honestly thought that um what is his name? The backup tight end was gonna take a step
Oh,
up, and
Davis Allen.
Davis Allen, I thought he was gonna
He
he's
got
gonna
a
be a
pass like early in the game Monday and then disappeared.
yeah. Um, but yeah, one more here from Mike Armenta. At this point, if Taffer isn't getting it done, let's see what Jimmy G
Oh no.
uh will give us.
Just
I don't
don't
know.
say Stetson Bennett and we're okay.
Yeah. I think a lot of female Ram fans in the Ramily would be excited to see Jimmy G, but outside of that, not a lot of actual football fans would want to see
Oh,
Jimmy G
it
be the
hasn't gotten
quarterback.
that bad. Come on, Michael.
Yeah, not to that point. All right, Gilbert. Last thing in terms of storylines for the Rams, let's move over to the defense. And the defense has played above expectations through the halfway point of the season. As we talked about, most of this defense is composed of young guys, draft picks, which is the right way to do it. That's one of the things that we've praised Les Need about. So far with the draft picks that they've gotten the last 2 seasons, the defense has now scored 3 touchdowns, which we didn't see with last season, even with Aaron Donald, as one of the focal points of that defense. They have 13 takeaways in 9 games. And also, let's not forget how much better the special teams has been with Josh Carty and even punter Ethan Evans, in his second season. So, my only question here is in terms of is there any concern that this Rams young defense of hitting a wall in the second half of the season, Gilbert?
It could be possible, but like I keep seeing them ascending. They keep getting better. They were so consistent early on that I kept saying like I want more, get fumbles or sacks, strip sacks and interceptions, and don't just push the pocket. And now they're doing that. So I think they keep getting better and better, and that's what experience and they know what to do now. So I don't see it. I think they're legit. I'm a little surprised though, like I mentioned on the recap show, that they didn't leave more of an impact against a bad Dolphins offensive line. But Tua is very good at getting the ball out quickly. And after Jared Verse took over that game in the second quarter, they made adjustments. So obviously, I want to see offenses adjust to that defensive front because they're game wreckers or as a unit, and it's starting to get to a point too where like Jared Verse might be a game record by himself. And I kept saying, Victor, there might not be an Aaron Donald here, but it could be a very collective group. But now I'm starting to think like single, like Jared Verse is that guy. And I think I wanted to say that for Kobe Turner for a bit. He hasn't had a big of an impact, but he's a defensive tackle. He's not gonna get a bunch of sacks, so he's still making an impact, creating a push. So you got two guys right there, and then two very good pieces in Byron Young and Braden Fizz. So they got that right, and that's a credit to Les Need. Obviously, the next phase is building the linebacker group, building the secondary. That's gonna take a lot of work. I don't know if you could maybe pay some guys. You don't want to blow money into free agency for nobody, right? So that's gonna be a project. But like again, if it doesn't end well with Matthew Stafford, you don't have to reach for a quarterback in the draft because you have a good defensive front. You have Puka and Kyron. You got offensive line that you paid. Hopefully they stay healthy, and then you could plug in a veteran quarterback, like we mentioned. But man, one of the biggest parts you could do after getting a quarterback in a rebuild is building the defensive front, and the Rams already did that.
Yeah, I mean, and they've developed. That's the other thing too. Like, Michael Hoyt, they took from, being a guy inside to the outside. And the only criticism I had was what the heck was he doing out in coverage trying to, guard with Jalen Waddle. I was like, What is 97 doing out there, trying to stay with Jalen Waddle?" But outside of that, I've really enjoyed watching this defense, as you said, Gilbert. And it's just not those guys. It's also Bobby Brown the second has been, or is it the second or the third? It's
Yeah,
Bobby
third.
Brown. He's been
Yeah,
excellent. You've also seen a couple Davis as well has also flashed as well along that defensive line. And then Roseboom had his best game of the season. That was great to see as well. Omar Speights has played really good for Troy Reader. I don't want to see Troy Reader. Um, I really don't want to see Troy Reader again this season. Hopefully, Omar Speights stays the starting linebacker there. And then, yeah, as you said, and I didn't see a lot of the one thing that we talked about in terms of the secondary. They didn't give up big explosive plays outside of that first that first drive by the Dolphins, and so you gotta like what they have. I just think like I just wonder if they're gonna hit a wall because we always see it with young defenses, especially as you get into week 15, 16, and 17, where you're not used to playing those many games. And so that would be my only concern. But I've been impressed with what I've seen so far. And I think that's the only thing that you're kind of, I guess, a little bit disappointed is the fact that the offense hasn't done what you expected them to do, and the defenses and the special teams have been really good this season.
Yeah, the only like real explosive play that they allowed was on the opening drive where Jalen Waddle got lost because Tua was extending the play. They couldn't get to Tua, and he just found somebody open. Because, as we know in football, if you're asking your secondary to cover for long stretches, someone's going to get open, and that's a credit to the defensive front because that was the only play where Tua was able to scramble, move around a little bit because they were always in his face. So, yeah, the numbers didn't really show it there. I think it was maybe 2 sacks, Victor, but he was getting the ball,
Three.
ball or three. So he's getting the ball out very quickly. That means less opportunities to go down the field. So Tyreek Hill got 3 catches for 16 yards. So we've been bashing the secondary. So give them credit for that. That's a team that specializes in down the field play, and they made them get the ball out very quickly.
Yeah, and what was it? I think Tua was 7 of 8 when he got outside the pocket. That's what beat the Rams defensively. I mean, the fact that they didn't have an answer for that. I mean, they did their job. They did what they were supposed to. They played good zone defense. I really like what they did. They bracketed Tyreek Hill, but once Tua was able to extend plays, that's when they were able to beat the Rams defense. And so and you said, like we said, Jared Verse has been a beast, and that was a great pickup. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people wanted Brock Bowers, but I think they they went about it the right way
Oh
by
yeah,
selecting Burst, because I thought Dallas Turner, or even what's his name from the
Leo Telato.
yeah, Latu. I thought those two guys were going to be better, but I was wrong. And then I know that a lot of people criticize the Rams for trading up to get Braden Fisk, but he's also been a fine, and it helps when you have teammates that play with each other, that know and that have that chemistry. And I think that's another thing that I give Les Need a lot of credit and the front office for being able to do. All right, Gilbert, before we get to our predictions here, we kind of talk about the betting line. Let me get to a couple more comments. We have ESG, who was he gave us a bunch of replies on the post game show, which we really appreciate. Uh, ESG says, you might have already answered this, but are they sticking with Jonah Jackson at center? He hasn't played center since his Rutger days. Gilbert, I would expect. I don't quote me on this, but I would expect them to make some changes, Gilbert. I think they're going to move some guys around. They want to make sure that they have that chemistry.
Yeah, this is gonna be probably a question on Friday where they ask who's gonna be a starting lineup, and I used to do this with coaches where like they didn't want to give you an answer, so you gotta be very specific. Who's gonna play center? Who's gonna play guard? And you get to
Yes,
three or four questions because I remember that 2022 season with the Rams where they kept shuffling. I kept just saying who's gonna play center, who's gonna play guard, left, right, left tackle, right tackle. All those questions I think are gonna be answered on Friday. You're gonna find out, and I'll be very surprised too if Sean McVay does the same thing and runs it back because that was not good.
he would probably say, "Well, Gilberto, we're gonna look at everything, and we're gonna look at the tape and see
Yeah,
how practice goes, and then we'll make our decision on Sunday."
I'll give him credit. There was many times he just flat out told me who's going to play. So we'll see if he hides from that. But I'll say he'll give you an answer Friday.
Yeah, whenever I listen to a lot of these press conferences, always Gary, the one that asks specifically, and I
Yeah.
like the way he phrases it because he's like, "L- I want to make sure of this," and then he always says that, and then he'll ask him, and then he'll be like, "Well, Gary, this and that," and
Yeah.
so
Well,
yes,
Gary, I told you I'm not gonna answer that, and then Gary's gonna
yes.
try again, which I respect.
Yes, which I like the fact that he follows up, which I really appreciate as someone who studied journalism. So, yeah, a shout out to. And then one more thing that I know before I get to the next comment, Eric Williams was right when we had him on before the season, and he talked about because he got to talk to Chris Shula, and it goes to this comment here. It says Daniel has Shula figured it out. Eric Williams told us about what he expected from Shula this season, and he talked about that we would expect more pressure than we saw from Raheem Morris, and he's been right on, Gilbert.
Yeah, and it did take him a while to figure it out and kind of get a flow for the game because blitzing is not easy. Because if you choose a bad spot, you get burned, and that's what happened earlier in the year. They got burned a lot with the secondary, and now he's starting to figure out what to do with a very consistent pass rush, when to pick your spots, when to just rely on a consistent push between 3 or 4 guys, and not, not put your secondary in a bad position. So it's just a rhythm, and it's a lot of mind games and guessing, and that's something you can't simulate unless you're out there, and with the bullets flying in the regular season, not in the preseason, the regular season. So I think that's what we're seeing too, because again, why all of a sudden the Dolphins, not take shots down the field is because he was picking his spots, and also like you could pretend to bring the blitz and then bring them back. It's all the mind games, and I think that was in Tua's mind, and I think you saw that in that game. I'm trying to think of another one. Even the Vikings were very explosive down the field. Yeah, Jefferson got loose a couple of times, but it wasn't for the entire game. So, he got Jordan. What did Jordan Addison do in that game, right? I
Right,
know Jackson Smith and Jigba had his way in Seattle, but you're seeing flashes where okay, it's not happening every single week, and it's only a
yeah,
3 game sample size. In the Raider one, you could throw in if you want. The Raiders are not good offensively, but that's 4 games right there where you got hurt one time. So that is definitely kudos to Chris Shula right there. And then all these stories came out of him because he was playing the Dolphins, and obviously his
right.
grandfather being Don Shula. It's pretty cool that he got that love on prime time, also knowing that his defense is on the rise.
And I think the biggest thing, and I know we talk about, you know, we see the a lot of coaches, um, they get criticized because they didn't put the work in, or they get handed things, and I feel like with him is he worked his way up. He started out with Wade Phillips, and he started at the bottom and he worked his way up, and he's put in the work, and I think he's being rewarded because of it, and that's what you like to see with guys like that who have, they come from a coaching family.
Yeah, and Vivek could relate. His grandfather was a GM of the 49ers. He could easily be like, "Hey, give me a job," but you got to work your way up.
Yep. One more here from Happy Gilmore. He says, "Thanks for the podcast, homie's got to head to work, horns up." So thank you for joining us. And hey, man, go and get that paper, man. I
Yeah.
know it's
Have a good
hard
day
out
at
there.
work.
Yeah, have a good night at work. Ram Showcase says the Rose Boom Spates inside linebacker combo is really
Yeah.
good.
What a
Cool to see
surprise.
Rose Boom start to settle in. Yeah, and I think that's been the another thing too the last couple of weeks is just seeing those two guys uh, do really well. That first game when both of them started, I was just like, "Oh my god, this looks really bad." And I think getting to be able to play together, another thing, chemistry that helps a lot, and especially when you have a guy like Space, who's an undrafted guy, it takes a little bit of time. One more here from All Good Things. Should stick with Bo Limmer. He's been doing fine, and I think he might be. I think if we see a changeover, I think we see him back at center.
Yeah, and another point to for Rams showcase, and another reason why the Rams offense blew the game on Monday. Devon Achan, what did he do? He didn't have a big time game, so that's
Yeah.
credit to linebackers for keeping tabs on him. Because that could definitely be a problem. So yeah, so the defense is doing well, and if you score one touchdown, Stafford, who knows what happened Monday? But I don't want to look backwards too much. It's just a reminder that yeah, Achan didn't even do much either.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, that offense didn't do a lot. They came in averaging 27 points. Yeah, they were able to score some points, but the one thing we said we felt like it was going to be a lot of explosive plays from the Dolphins, and we didn't see that. So that was another thing that the defense did really well. All right, Gilbert, our the Rams are 4.5 point favorites. Earlier in the week, this was a 5 point line, and the over under was 44. It's gone down to 43 and a half. What's the right side of this line?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the Patriots and the points. It's a lot of points here, and you brought up
Same.
a good reminder of that Giants game last week, or sorry, last year. It could be a little sloppy and not pretty. It could be ugly, but then you win the game. I think the Patriots could cover being at home here. So just too many points here.
Yeah, I'm already gonna tell you this, Gilbert, in advance for tomorrow's show of Gilberto's Hour. I'm taking the over under. I'm taking the under here just because the Rams haven't been able to score over 20 points, and the Patriots defense is actually really good. And I don't know what to expect. As much as I like what I've seen from Drake May, I don't know how much that offense can muster. A lot of the scoring that the Patriots did do against that Bears was because they had short fields, and so I just don't see this being a high scoring game. So I feel like that 43 and a half might be too high. And so yeah, that would be something I'd be looking to bet is that under. Um, but now let's get to our predictions, Gilbert.
Yeah, that's a tough one though. The 43. You know what? But I'm gonna go over, but not by a lot, Victor. I worry about that defense because of what the Jaguars lit them up. But it is turning around a little bit. That was a nice game, 19-3 against the Bears. So maybe they are trending in the right direction. But I don't know. I don't want to fall into the trap because, like I mentioned to start the show, they won one game against the free falling Bears, but they also lost to the Tennessee Titans. The Titans suck. They're not a good team. So I don't
Yeah,
want to fall into the
good
trap
point.
there. So I'll say the Rams win, 23-20. Sorry, I got to get the over, right?
All right.
24-20, and yeah, they cover Burley 44 points. But then yeah, and the Patriots cover because 4.5. So and I get the over, so 24-20 Rams.
Yeah, Rams Showcase says I'm going with the Rams minus 4.5
Oh,
for sure.
okay.
Patriots are 32nd ranked offense against our young guys. I like it. Even if the offense can get moving, I like a 16-3 kind of game here.
Mm, okay.
Yeah. And then all good things says 16-13 Pats.
Oh, wow, okay.
Wow.
He's fed up.
So yeah, straight up for the Pats there. Um yeah, I think the Rams win. It's going to be a low scoring game. I think it's going to be something like 20 to 50, 20 to 17, something like that, where it's under 40 points. Or even what all good things just said. I think it's something like 16 to 30. We haven't seen this Rams team score over 20 points. The only time they did it was against the Vikings. And that was at home. What was another thing we've been seeing, this season,
Yeah,
Gilbert, with the Rams on the
road.
road? They have not been good. I don't think they've scored over 20 points on the road, and so I think they win this game. It's going to be a sloppy game, as you said, but I think it's going to be one of those 17 or 14 type of games where they eke out a win late in the game, and Josh Carty wins it for them. And that's been another thing we haven't really talked about it. I've been really impressed with Josh Carty and what we've seen from the special teams. And shout out to what is it, Blackburn, the special teams coordinator.
Yeah,
He got a lot of heat last year. A lot of people wanted him fired, but he's done a great job. It's amazing when you don't hear much about special teams and no one says anything about the special teams coordinator. So shout
yeah.
out to him, Chase Blackburn. There you go.
It's like the long snapper. Like if you're getting talked about, you just under wrong. Just like when Debo smacked him around. Why are we talking about the long snapper? Because he got smacked around and he was talking crap to Debo and yeah. But yeah, you know, one thing, Victor, I just feel like everything you're saying is spot on, but the way they just laid an egg and it was a total dud, I just see them like being annoyed and they're gonna turn it around and score
Yeah,
over 20 points. I'm not saying it's gonna be a blowout or an easy game, but I think offensively there's something there to prove. And
right.
you got a bad taste in your mouth. I get you're going on the road, you're going to the East Coast, but there's also a really bad team with the Patriots. So
Yeah.
the Dolphins are better. But I think that's why I'm going with the over here. I just feel like they might show us a little more. If they don't, if it isn't one of like if they win, but also only score like 13 points, you got a whole lot of problems because that's 2 games in a row now.
Yeah, and the other game I forgot to mention was I think it was around this time last season, Gilbert. They went to Baltimore and almost upset the
Oh yeah,
Ravens, and
yeah.
they scored a bunch. I thought it was going to be a low scoring game, and they stayed with the Ravens, and I think it was like the best game of the season last season. It was like 30. It was in the 30s for both teams. So maybe we get that from the Rams, and they finally figure out their offense. So
It's
yeah,
funny that you bring that up because they kept talking about that guy Wallace because he had a touchdown against the Bengals. They're like the last time we saw Wallace was a punt return touchdown
yeah,
against the Rams. Like I'm like, oh,
yeah.
I remember that guy now. But yeah.
Yeah, that's true. A couple more comments here, and we'll get out of here, Gilbert. Delver Salgado says Rams 24, New England 13. So he likes the over here as well, and he likes the Rams to cover.
Mhm.
And then Rams showcases. I don't think as I'm as down on us as most fans. We're just getting healthy. Need some continuity. Haven't had our full offense together yet, and I think that's the other thing too, Gilbert, that we didn't mention was the fact that now with the new rules in terms of how much you can practice during the week, not having that, especially with guys coming back from injuries, it's kind of hard to just go out there and when you haven't had any practice time to go out there and just be like, hey, we're good to go. We can just build off our chemistry. So he has Rams showcase does have a point there.
I also do wonder how healthy Puka Nakua is. He didn't really have an impact, and then he got thrown out of the game in Seattle. And remember, he got an injury report pretty late, and he's been trying to play like tough it out. So that could also be something we're not talking about as
Yeah,
much either.
he does not look explosive like he did
Yeah,
last season,
there's
Gilbert.
something
He's
going on
playing
there.
hurt. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's playing hurt. Yeah, he might not be on the injury report, but that doesn't mean that he does look a little bit slower, and that might have to do with and I that's been part of also another thing that I've noticed with this offense is outside of Demarcus Robinson, there's not a lot of explosive plays on this. And the other one was Tyler Johnson, where he caught a pass that I think wasn't intended for him, and then I think it was against Detroit, and that's been I think the longest explosive play of the season, and they haven't had one of those since we saw the overtime game with Demarcus Robinson. So another thing that I kind of want to see, I want to see more explosive plays from this Rams offense because they've pretty much just been, grinding out drives, and that's not going to get it done, especially when you're expected to have a really good offense.
Yeah, if they didn't pull out that Seattle game, it could be a totally different story right now. But
Yep. Yeah. But that's does it for our week 11 preview between the 4-5 Rams and the 3-7 Patriots. We've given you all our information that we have for this game. One more comment here from All Good Things. They really need to utilize two more for McVay's sake. And yeah, especially once those guys came back, he just disappears. You want to see him, they see him more. We have one more comment here from Alex. Great show. Been diving and listening. I hope Rams are mad upset and score over 30 points on a bad Patriots team.
there you go,
Uh,
Alexander
yeah,
H. I agree with that take. They're gonna be
yeah,
pissed
and
off.
yes, Rams showcase. Thank you guys. If you ever want to call out, I'd love to have you on sometime.
Hey, yeah,
Uh,
definitely
yeah,
appreciate it. We'll check you
yeah,
out. Thank you for checking our show out too.
yeah. Gilbert is the expert here. He does it for Sports Illustrated. He was a former beat reporter for the Rams. So,
I'm
yeah, he's a great
expert in
guest.
quotation marks or air quotes, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Hey, your picks have been good lately, so there you go, Gilbert.
I
Take
did,
take
I
the
did,
compliment.
I did pick the Rams last week, so I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, you want to bet because of it, so
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and by the way, check out the merch side. That's actually a good promo before we get out of here.
yeah,
Let me toss that in there. But yeah, we had our guy Jorge who's not here today, who usually is.
yeah,
Buy some stuff from the merch site, and it really helps us out. It supports the network here, Compas on the Beat, and we're trying to get to New Orleans for Super Bowl Radio Row, and have a show there in person and bring more content. So if you want to buy a nice hoodie here, got the hoodie right there. Check out the
yeah.
merch site. We're low on sizes, but once we get rid of this order, all these sizes, we're gonna buy new orders and load up on more sizes. So hopefully we'll get this batch out of the way early. But help us out. Maybe it could be a gift for somebody for Christmas.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I mean, I guess this year when we were at our Super Bowl radio row, we got to interview Quinn Lake. So, and he gave us a lot of cool insights into Chris Shula and what he was really excited about the hire there. So, yeah, we were going to New Orleans this next year, and so we're really excited about that. But in order for us to be able to do that, we gotta pay for some of those things. So we
Yeah.
really appreciate, honestly, if you can help us with this. But honestly, the best thing you can do is like our show, like whenever we're on, and yeah, hit that subscribe button. So really appreciate everybody that joined us today. Ram Showcase, welcome. All good things as always. We like seeing it. Alexander Age. We have Daniel Calderon, Michael Armenta, Delbert Salgado, and Happy Gilmore, who joined us right before he was going into work. So that was awesome to see. Um, and then we have one more here, Gilbert. What do you think about this, guys? It's not Gilbert is our guy. He's the one that gets us the interviews. But any more player interviews on the horizon?
Yeah, I could, always try. I could always go to the Rams and say, "Hey, we're doing well. Look at all the comments that we have. We got a good amount of subscribers. We got engagement here." So, honestly, the best way that we could get more interviews, because they always ask, "Okay, what are your numbers?" I hate that it's this way, but the views, the likes, subscribers. So, the more you guys support, the more you're commenting, the more you're engaging, and the more the views go up, the more the likes go up. The Rams could easily be like, "Oh, cool. I see. I like what you guys are doing. Here you go, some players." So, that's another way to help us out. So I know we're asking you guys to check out the merch site, but just being here and talking to us and bringing up the views could definitely go a long way and open up many doors and opportunities for us. So hopefully in the future we'll get some interviews here.
Yeah, and if you made it this far, if there's anything you guys want to see, whether it's you wanna get a perspective from the other team, like if you guys want us to interview like a reporter from the other team, if you want us to get a reporter from a B reporter or someone that has knows a little bit about the Rams, whether it's like Eric Williams or Tyler Dragon or guys like that, anything, any feedback, let us know what you guys want to see on the show. I mean, I know, Gilbert, covers the league, and so he gives us a lot of perspective. But if you want to hear a different perspective, we'd love to know what it is that you guys want to hear, and if you guys want more player interviews, we'll try to do that. But yeah, Gilbert, thank you for doing all that.
Yeah, and before we leave, I haven't seen them in the comments, but Evan, shout out to you. You donated money to the channel here. I know it took you a while to figure it out, but we appreciate the patience and being persistent, and you figured it out. We saw it when we left, so that it made us really happy. So thank you, Evan, if you're watching or listening, for donating to the channel here too. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and it was always cool to just see how much this community continues to grow, and we got a new viewer here in Ram Showcase, so it's really cool to see people on here. As always, a lot of names we usually see, like we said, all good things. Daniel Calderon, Happy Gilmore, Mike Armenta. So shout out to you guys, because honestly, part of the reason we do this is for you guys. But yeah, it's been a good show, Gilbert. We're in week 11. Rams really need a win here, so hopefully they can deliver. We'll be back for the post game show. We won't be on because it's a 10 a.m. game. We won't actually be back. We won't have the show till like around 4:45 because that's when Gilbert has some time. And so it's also I gotta make sure I say this, Gilbert, because if not, I'm gonna be in trouble. It is my 1 year anniversary on
Ah,
Sunday,
nice.
so yes, I'm looking forward to Sunday. So I'll get to watch the game on at 10 a.m. and either go out to lunch or after dinner after our anniversary
Mm, okay.
get together. So
Look,
yes,
I can't believe it's been a year since we were in Oklahoma, but
but
congrats on the 1 year. But yeah, time
yeah.
flies.
It does. So yeah, this time last year we were in Oklahoma for the wedding. So yes, it's good to be here and talking Rams. So yeah, we'll join you guys again for the post game show. But Gilbert, it's time for us to go.
Yeah, let's get out of here. That was a good show. I always worry about shows after a terrible performance and a loss, but everybody was here, lively and engaged. But I know people who are pissed off also like to chime in and talk, so that's a good thing too. But let's get moving to week 11. A lot of good games, by the way. If just to be a football fan, starting Thursday night, Commanders and the Eagles. Check us out after Commanders Eagles on Gilberto's Hour, where you get insight of the week between me and Victor. We have a good time there. We talk fantasy football, NFL betting, just anything football related. Check us out on Thursday nights there. It's pretty late, but it's like 8:30, 8:45 time. And then obviously we'll be back here on Sunday, like Victor mentioned, for the post game show. But yeah, check out everything we're doing. It's also Chargers, Bengals, Bills, Chiefs, Steelers, Ravens,
There's
Texans,
a lot of good games.
Cowboys, Monday Night Football. It was almost a
But that one.
perfect prime time schedule, but it's not. But yeah, we got to get going here. Again, good show. Thank you all for all the support. But on that note, ya nos vamos, pues, vámonos.